Hi gods and goddesses, this is Trisha Croft from Lightoflemuria, and today I want to share my journey with you in walking the goddess path and why I take spiritual tours to Egypt and what you'll experience or could experience. So today I'm going to be sharing a very special story, one that is close to my heart, very dear to my heart. And it's a story of how I become a high priestess and initiated into the goddess path. And I'm going to be talking about my initiation to the ancient Egyptian goddess Sekhmet. The goddess Sekhmet. And when I first laid eyes upon Sekhmet in Egypt on a very sacred tour. So for those who are non-believers, haters, you can check out now. But for those of you who are initiates and interested in this path and ancient Egypt and a spiritual path, keep listening, because this is what I'm going to share with you is absolutely profound and amazing, and I would call it my spiritual awakening. For those who don't know me, my background is I am an international clairvoyant medium, channeler and healer. I've been doing this for many, many years. But in my 20s, I really was drawn to witchcraft in my very early 20s. Probably late teens, I would say. And look, for studying heavily into the witchcraft, there was initiations along the way. And so these initiations, the first initiation is to establish your energy and understand self. So there was high practices in witchcraft to establish your energy field, understand it, but then not only to understand yours, but to understand the outside energy so you can understand both. But the most important thing is with that is you understand how to protect yourself from outside. So witchcraft, that was the first initiation, because as we cast circles, we are casting out the everyday plane to create magic. So it was very important to establish your energy field and to demand your space. And this could happen for many years, this initiation, or months. It depends on how heavily you studied the craft. The next initiation is to establish your bonds and relationship with the elemental light beings, the elemental world. So we're talking about Mother Water, Mother Air, Mother Earth, Father Fire. Whatever you like to call them, that's what I call them. You have your own bonds, your own relationship with them. So this took many years for me to really establish these bonds. I would sit in practice and connect with these deities, because in the craft, what you're doing and you're wanting to call on the elementals for your circles. You're calling on the elementals to protect you in your right and be able to conjure up and shift and change in these elemental worlds. So the next initiation is quite big. It is the initiation into connecting with the gods and the goddesses. So you are connecting with the divine masculine and the divine feminine. And we all have these qualities. We're not just female, we're not just male, we are both. And so you are establishing balance and honoring that. And this is an initiation process into the craft so you can connect with the ether and bring down and manifest in such a beautiful way. Now, with becoming a high priestess is the next level. And for me, this was my path. It may not be for everybody's path, but it was very important for me to start to establish an initiation as a high priestess into the craft. To become into the high priestess, it was to connect with a specific deity, god or goddess, or both. And so I searched many years for my particular goddess. You know, there's goddesses all over the world, all over the world. You've got the goddess Pele in Hawaii, Kuan Yin, the goddess Kali in India. You know, so there's goddesses all over and worshipped all over the world. And so I sat with this energy in search, giving it over to the goddess and the universe. And all of a sudden I started to channel this warrior goddess, and she would come through in my circles, my meditation, my day-to-day life. And I would call this goddess, I would call this beautiful being that I would channel the warrior lion goddess. And it wasn't until months prior to going on a sacred journey to Egypt, my first time, I've never been to Egypt. So the 2 months prior to going to Egypt, I stumbled across the ancient Egyptian goddess Sekhmet, and the pennies dropped. And I was so excited. And so I started really channeling and bringing through that ancient energy of the mother and the warrior. And I was never one of these people that, you know, was so drawn to Egypt, you know, had past life experiences as a child and was so drawn to Egypt. I really wasn't. You know, I knew that this was my path. You know, a year before going to Egypt. But throughout my childhood, I never had synchronicities. But now looking back on my timeline, my whole path, I now see glimpses of Egypt shining through in little pockets of my life. So it's quite amazing. But yeah, I never was completely drawn until I got to Egypt. And so step off the plane, and I've been practicing previously heavily on ancient rituals prior to going to Egypt. And so it was time to go to Egypt and to go into Karnak temple, to Sekhmet's chapel. And I remember going in with the group, my group, and I was so excited. You know, I could feel the energy so strong. And I remember it was so hot. Oh my God, it was so hot. And the sun was just beating down on my skin. It was getting hotter and hotter. And I was trying so hard to connect with these energies. I mean, I could feel them. But for me, I needed to connect. I need to connect in a certain ancient way. And so I remember walking through the temple, and I was just getting agitated, cranky. You know, because I wanted to tap into this. And it's a big sign when you start to get agitated and cranky in sacred spaces, especially these amazing temples of initiation, to get cranky, it's a big sign to say you're not purified. And so I remember the whole group, we went in to go towards the chapel, Sekhmet's chapel, and they told us we weren't allowed to. And I was devastated, absolutely devastated. I spent the last year channeling this goddess and going over on a sacred journey, and to say we're not allowed in, it was just, oh, it was profound. So they did say maybe come back in the afternoon. And so we made a pact to the group saying, okay, we'll go back to the cruise ship, we'll have lunch, we'll relax, and then we'll come back in the afternoon. And so off we went. We walked out of Karnak temple. I was storming and stamping my feet, and I was so cranky. And instead of hanging out with the group, I went straight into my room and looked at myself in the mirror, and I was so disconnected from myself, disconnected from my body, and I went right. And so I had these ancient rituals, spells and meditations that I had been practicing and channeling. And so I spent the next 2 hours doing my rituals. And then I looked into the mirror after, and I just seen white. My soul was white again. I was purified. You know, I feel, you know, looking back, how ignorant and I was to go in such a high energy place not being purified. So, you know, that's a newbie, a rookie mistake, I suppose, but it's one I've learnt over the many years of going to Egypt now. And so we finally began to go back to Karnak temple that afternoon. And as I took my first steps into Karnak temple, the complex, something profound shifted in me. And I felt like I was on a mission. All of a sudden, I started connecting to these energies, not just feeling them. That's another level. But this connecting to these energies, like literally connecting. What happened to me, and I'm going to share something dear to me, is my spiritual body shifted. So I felt like it elongated, and I was out of my body. Normally in the day-to-day life, we're encased in a shell, our body. You know, you can sense and feel yourself in the body. You can feel, you know, you can sense the top of your head down to the tips of your toes, and feel that. This was different. I was not encased anymore on a spiritual level. I felt 10 feet tall. I had shifted out of past my aura down to the roots of Mother Earth. And instead of walking through the temple gates, I was gliding, literally gliding. And I thought, oh, wow, you know, this is amazing. I looked at the group and they just looked at me like I was normally walking, so that was fine. So, you know, I'm having this moment, you know, but I realized that I had shifted through the different dimensions. I was past the 5th dimension in the everyday world, okay? In the everyday world. And everything was happening, you know, the everyday was getting on with their life, but my reality, my dimensions had shifted. I had tapped in to an initiate's role. having an initiation. And so as I'm having this experience, we're all walking to the goddess Sekhmet's chapel. And again, we got told we can't go in, but we may go up to the hill next to her chapel and meditate or do whatever we're doing. And I just knew with every fiber, every cell in my body that we were going into that temple. I just knew. Why would I be having these initiations? And you know, I just knew we were going in. So, okay, so we went over to the mountain, the little hill, and we were conjuring up and calling on Sekhmet and you know, trying to really make this happen. And I'd say we'd be there on that hill for about half an hour, and all of a sudden we got the go-ahead, come down the hill, come now. And I just remember I ran into that temple, nearly knocking the guard over. And I just went in and I went home. I felt like I went home. And I didn't run in disrespectfully either. I was drawn in like a vortex. And as I stood and I looked up at the statue, and you can see me in the background of when I actually got initiated on that day, I looked up at the mother Sekhmet and just was mesmerized. And to me, that day felt like, I'm going to say it was better than my wedding day. And in saying that, my wedding day was beautiful. But this day was a wedding day for me in becoming a priestess. And I couldn't take my hands off Sekhmet. I kissed her feet, I worshipped her, and I had my moment with her. And we would have sat there for about an hour, and I didn't want to say goodbye. I couldn't say goodbye, but I had to. And I know I took a piece of me, a piece of Sekhmet with me on that day. I call this day a spiritual awakening. You know, it was a miracle. And when you go to Egypt, there's so many initiations to be had if you know how to tap in and connect to these energies. You can feel them. If you know how to do them properly. I've been doing my tours now for over 10 years, and I take a couple of tours per year. So I'm heavily initiated into the ancient Egyptian magical mystery schools and their teachings. And these are the practices now, or the initiations that I had. I am now able to give them to my gypsy travelers when they come on my tour. So you guys can have these experiences or near these experiences, because they are soul awakening. So if you are interested in my tours, or you're interested in just connecting or sharing your story, if you have had a story of the Mother Sekhmet and you would like to share, please comment below, or connect with me if you're interested in our next spiritual tour. We take a few a year. So definitely connect. My email, my website is below. You can connect. If you'd like to like us on Lightoflemuria Facebook, follow us on Instagram, Lightoflemuria, or subscribe and follow us on YouTube, just so you can get some clips and some insight in what we actually do over in Egypt and the magic and meditations that we do on these spiritual tours. So please stay connected, and thank you for listening. And you know, that was a very intimate story. I don't really share a lot of my stories. Oh, I haven't, but I am now starting to. So I'll be posting more like these with the goddess Isis, the goddess Hathor, the god Osiris, Anubis, all of them. So stay tuned and stay connected. Blessings, blessings, gods and goddesses.